Maya Chin pressed her palm against the viewing window of her temporary quarters, watching the twin suns of Thessera Minor sink below the crystalline horizon. The sky turned shades of amber and violet that Earth's atmosphere could never quite replicate, and she found herself memorizing the colors, storing them away like precious things. In 48 hours, she would leave this world behind forever. Her research bag sat packed near the door, 20 months of work compressed into temperature-controlled containers. Soil samples, genetic sequencing data, 347 plant specimens that would revolutionize Earth's understanding of xenobotany. She had accomplished everything she came here to do, written papers that would define her career, made discoveries that would echo through scientific communities for decades. She should have been celebrating. Instead, she kept finding excuses to walk through the palace research gardens one more time. The Thesserans had built their royal complex around nature rather than imposing upon it. Gardens flowed through corridors like living rivers, and laboratories opened directly onto groves of bioluminescent flora that painted the nights with soft, moving light. It was here that Maya had spent most of her time, working alongside the palace research team, cataloging and studying plant species that seemed to blur the line between biology and art. It was here that she had met Kale. "Dr. Chen, you are working late again." Maya turned to find Director Saras approaching through the fern-like structures that lined the pathway. The elderly Thesseran scientist had been her supervisor and mentor, patient with her questions and generous with knowledge. "I wanted to finish the final classification reports," Maya said, gesturing at the tablet she carried. "Make sure everything is properly documented before I transfer custody of the specimens." "Very thorough, as always." Saras's long fingers touched one of the glowing plants gently, the way a parent might touch a sleeping child. "Prince Kale will miss your dedication. He speaks quite highly of your contributions." Maya felt warmth rise in her cheeks and was grateful for the dim lighting. Kale was the Empire's royal botanist, and for the past year, they had worked together almost daily. He was brilliant, with an understanding of plant biology that seemed almost instinctive, and he had a way of explaining complex concepts that made even the strangest alien life forms feel comprehensible. He also had a smile that made her forget what she was saying mid-sentence, but that was a detail she tried very hard not to think about. "The prince has been an excellent research partner," Maya said carefully. "Thessera is fortunate to have him." "Indeed." Saras paused, something shifting in the scientist's expression. "Maya, there is something I should tell you." But before the director could continue, a palace messenger appeared at the entrance to the gardens, moving with the kind of urgent precision that meant official business. "Dr. Maya Chen of Earth?" The messenger's voice was formal, clipped. Maya nodded, and the messenger extended a crystalline data chip. "Your presence is required at the Royal Coordination Center immediately. There has been a complication with your departure authorization." The cold feeling that settled into Maya's stomach was instant and familiar. She had felt it before, during her first week on Thessera when an equipment malfunction had nearly destroyed months of research. "What kind of complication?" The messenger's expression remained neutral. "I was instructed only to deliver the message, Doctor. Please come with me." Maya glanced at Director Saras, who looked genuinely surprised. "I know nothing of this," the elderly scientist said quietly. "But you should go. Perhaps it is simply an administrative matter." Except Maya had spent 20 months navigating Thesseran bureaucracy, and she knew that nothing requiring immediate attention from the Royal Coordination Center was ever simple. The Coordination Center occupied one of the palace's highest towers, a space designed for managing the complex logistics of an interstellar empire. Maya had been there only twice before, both times for routine clearance procedures. Now, as she entered the main chamber, she found it filled with officials she didn't recognize, all wearing expressions that ranged from uncomfortable to openly hostile. And standing at the center of it all, looking as confused as Maya felt, was Prince Kale. He was tall even by Thesseran standards, with the characteristic long limbs and elegant features of his species, but there was something more grounded about him than most royalty she had met. Maybe it was the dirt perpetually under his fingernails from working in the gardens, or the way his formal robes always seemed slightly disheveled, as if he had thrown them on as an afterthought. Right now, he looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Maya, he started, taking a step toward her, but one of the officials raised a hand, cutting him off. Dr. Chen, please approach. The speaker was a middle-aged Thessaran woman whose name tag identified her as Administrator Valera. Your departure clearance has been reviewed by the Imperial Council. Maya felt her pulse quicken. Reviewed? It was approved 3 days ago. I have confirmation from both Earth Embassy and Thessaran Customs. Circumstances have changed. Valera's tone suggested this conversation was a formality she would rather skip. Your continued presence on Thessera Minor has been deemed essential to ongoing research initiatives. Your departure authorization is hereby suspended indefinitely. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Maya heard Kale make a sound of protest, but another official was already speaking over him, listing regulations and protocols that might as well have been in a foreign language for all the sense they made. She caught fragments: critical phase of study, irreplaceable expertise, diplomatic considerations, the needs of the Empire. I need to contact Earth, Maya managed, her voice sounding distant to her own ears. My university is expecting my return. My family needs to be notified. Earth will be informed through proper diplomatic channels, Valera said. You will be provided quarters in the residential wing. Your research privileges will continue. This is not imprisonment, Dr. Chen. It is a request for your continued cooperation in matters of imperial importance. A request that I cannot refuse. Maya felt anger beginning to burn through the shock. Because that sounds a lot like imprisonment to me. This audience is concluded. Valera gestured to guards Maya hadn't noticed before, standing at attention near the exits. Someone will escort you to your new accommodations. Maya wanted to argue, wanted to demand real explanations, but the officials were already dispersing, treating the matter as settled. Only Kale remained, looking stricken. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but one of the guards was already moving forward, and whatever he wanted to say remained unspoken. The quarters they provided Maya were beautiful in the way that prisons could be when designed by people who understood aesthetics but not freedom. 3 rooms overlooking the eastern gardens, walls that shifted color with the light, furniture that seemed grown rather than built. There was a workspace with equipment far superior to what she had used in the research labs, a bedroom with a bed large enough for 3 people, and a sitting area that opened onto a private terrace. Maya hated all of it. She spent the first 2 days testing the boundaries of her confinement. She could move freely through most of the palace, could access the research gardens and laboratories, could order meals and speak with lower-level staff. But every exit was politely blocked, every attempt to access external communications met with apologetic explanations about security protocols and pending authorizations that never seemed to come. On the 3rd morning, she woke before dawn and went to the greenhouse complex, seeking solace in the familiar routine of cataloging and observation. The plants did not judge, did not lie, did not trap her with bureaucratic doublespeak. They simply grew, following the logic of biology and light. She was examining a specimen of night-blooming Thessera vine when she heard footsteps behind her. You always did prefer the early hours. Kale's voice was quiet, almost tentative. Fewer people to avoid awkward conversations. Maya did not turn around, keeping her attention on the vine's bioluminescent flowers. They glowed soft blue in the pre-dawn darkness, opening to release pollen that sparkled like captured starlight. Should I be avoiding you, Your Highness? She heard him wince at the formal title. Maya, please. I did not know they were going to detain you. I swear I knew nothing about it until that meeting. Convenient. She finally looked at him, and was disturbed to find him looking genuinely distressed. His usual careful appearance was disheveled, his robes wrinkled as if he had slept in them, or perhaps not slept at all. Very convenient that the royal botanist knew nothing about the royal decision to imprison the visiting researcher. Kale moved closer, careful not to touch her, respecting the space she had put between them. I have been trying to find answers. My aunt, the Empress, she will not see me. The council claims they are acting on security concerns but will not specify what concerns. Something is very wrong here, Maya, and I think we are both being kept in the dark. Maya wanted to stay angry, to hold on to the clean simplicity of betrayal and resentment. But she had worked alongside Kale for a year, had seen him gentle with plants and patient with confused assistants, had watched him challenge his own assumptions when data contradicted his theories. He was many things, but he was not a liar. Why would they detain me? She asked finally. My research is complete. The specimens are documented. Anything else they need could be obtained through normal diplomatic channels. Kale glanced around the greenhouse, checking for observers, then moved to a workstation and pulled up a data screen. Over the past week, I have been doing some investigation. Quietly, carefully. He brought up a series of documents, most of them heavily encrypted. These are council communications. I should not have access to them, but I learned years ago that security protocols assume royalty will not be interested in boring administrative details. Maya moved to stand beside him, close enough to see the screen, close enough to catch the scent of growing things that always seem to cling to him. What am I looking at? Encrypted files referencing your research. Specifically, your work on the Sovara plant. Kale highlighted a section of text. Do you remember that species? The one with the unusual regenerative properties? Maya felt her breath catch. Of course I remember. We spent 4 months studying it. The cellular structure was unlike anything I had ever seen. It could regenerate from almost complete destruction, regrow entire root systems from a single cell. Kale nodded slowly. 3 weeks ago, my cousin fell ill. Princess Nara, the Empress's daughter. It is a genetic condition, degenerative, affecting the nervous system. We have no treatment for it in Thessaran medicine. He pulled up another document, this one showing medical scans and treatment protocols. Someone on the research council noticed similarities between Nara's cellular degeneration and the regenerative mechanisms in the Sovara plant. Maya's mind raced ahead, seeing the connections. They think my research could lead to a cure. They do not think, Maya. They know. Kale's voice was heavy with something that sounded like guilt. I have been reviewing your data. The compounds you isolated from the Sovara plant have properties that could absolutely address Nara's condition. You discovered something revolutionary, and you were about to take it back to Earth. So they trapped me here to force me to continue the research. Maya felt anger flaring again, but it was complicated now by understanding. Why not just ask? Why not explain the situation and request my help? Because it is not that simple. Kale pulled up one more document, and this one made Maya's blood run cold. It was a communication from Earth, from her own university, discussing the potential military applications of her Sovara research. They were planning to classify her findings, to restrict access, to potentially weaponize regenerative technology for combat medicine while denying it to other worlds. Maya sank into a nearby chair, her legs suddenly unable to support her. I did not know. I swear, Kale, I had no idea they were planning this. I believe you. He crouched beside her chair, his long fingers careful not to touch her but hovering close, offering comfort through proximity. But my aunt knew. Thessaran intelligence intercepted these communications weeks ago. She was faced with an impossible choice. Let you leave and watch your research become Earth's exclusive property, potentially weaponized, or detain you and destroy diplomatic relations between our worlds. And she chose her daughter over diplomacy. Maya could not quite blame her for that, even through her anger and fear. What mother would not? She chose poorly in how she executed that choice. Kale's voice was gentle but firm. She should have trusted you with the truth. She should have asked for your help rather than taking it by force. Now she has created exactly the diplomatic incident she was trying to avoid, and she has made an enemy of someone who might have been an ally. They sat in silence for a moment, surrounded by growing things and soft bioluminescent light. Maya's mind worked through implications and possibilities, weighing ethics against practicality, autonomy against compassion. This Princess Nara, Maya said finally. How old is she? 17, in Earth years. Kale's voice was quiet. She is brilliant, kind, and very frightened. The degeneration is accelerating. Without treatment, she has perhaps 6 months remaining. Maya closed her eyes, thinking of her own younger sister, of what she would do if their positions were reversed. Show me the medical data. All of it. And the complete Silvara research files. Kale straightened, hope and caution warring in his expression. Maya, you do not have to do this. We can find another way. We can pressure the council, appeal to Earth directly. We can waste time while a girl dies. Maya opened her eyes and met his gaze. I became a scientist to help people, Kale. To expand knowledge and improve lives. My university may have had other plans for my research, but they do not own my conscience. She stood, moving to the workstation. But I am not doing this as a prisoner. If I am going to help, it will be my choice, made freely, with full transparency. What do you need? First, I need access to the medical team treating Princess Nara. I need to examine the patient myself, verify the diagnosis and assess treatment viability. Maya's mind was already shifting into research mode, organizing priorities and protocols. Second, I need unrestricted access to all plant specimens and laboratory facilities. Third, I need regular communication with Earth. Not to discuss the research, but to let my family know I am safe and here by choice. The Empress will never agree to that third condition. Kale looked pained. She cannot risk Earth discovering the real reason for your detention. Then she will have to decide what matters more. Maya turned to face him fully. Her daughter's life, or her pride. Because I will not be complicit in deception, even for a good cause. Either we do this honestly, or we do not do it at all. Kale studied her for a long moment, and Maya saw the exact instant when admiration shifted into something deeper in his eyes. Something that made her heart beat faster and her carefully maintained professional distance feel suddenly fragile. You are extraordinary, he said softly. Do you know that? Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks and turned back to the workstation to hide her reaction. I am a scientist with a conscience. That should not be extraordinary. It should be baseline. And yet here we are. Kale moved to stand beside her again, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. Maya, there is something I need to say. I have tried to respect professional boundaries and the fact that you were always meant to return to Earth. But if we are being honest now, if we are laying truth on the table, then you should know that this past year has been the best of my life, not because of the research, though that has been fulfilling, but because of you. Working with you, learning from you, even just being in the same room as you. He paused, and when he continued, his voice was barely above a whisper. And the thought of you leaving, of never seeing you again, has been like a weight on my chest that I could not name or acknowledge. Maya's hands stilled on the workstation. Her heart was doing complicated things in her chest, racing and stumbling and forgetting its rhythm. She had spent months convincing herself that what she felt was purely professional respect, that the way she looked for him in crowded rooms and saved interesting discoveries to share with him first was simply good collegial practice. She had never been particularly good at lying to herself. Kale, she started, then stopped, unsure how to navigate this new territory. They had crossed from colleagues to friends over the past year, but this was something else entirely. Something that could not be uncrossed or taken back. You do not have to say anything. He stepped back, giving her space again. I only wanted you to know. Whatever you decide about the research, about staying or leaving, I want it to be your free choice. But I also want you to make that choice knowing all the relevant variables. And I am, apparently, a relevant variable. Maya turned to look at him fully, this man who had taught her to see beauty in alien biology, who had laughed at her terrible Thessaran pronunciation and patiently corrected it, who had sat with her through failed experiments and celebrated successful ones, who had somehow become essential to her daily existence without her quite noticing when it happened. The gardens were beginning to lighten with approaching dawn, the bioluminescent plants fading as natural light took over. Somewhere in the palace, a girl was dying. Somewhere on Earth, her family was worrying about her unexplained absence. And standing in front of Maya was a choice she had not expected to have to make. "I need to think," she said finally. "About all of this. The research, the Empress's deception, what you just said. I need time to process." "Of course." Kale inclined his head in a gesture that was part respect, part apology. "Take whatever time you need. I will arrange a meeting with the medical team. And I will speak to my aunt about your conditions, though I cannot promise she will listen." He turned to leave, then paused at the greenhouse entrance. "Maya. When you are making your decisions, remember that you deserve to choose your own happiness. Not Earth's interests, not the Empress's needs, not even Princess Nara's life. Those are all factors to consider, but your happiness, your life, your future, those matter too." Then he was gone, leaving Maya alone in the gardens with growing things and dawning light and more questions than she had answers for. The summons came 5 days later, delivered on a crystalline chip that bore the Empress's personal seal. Maya had spent those days working with the medical team, examining Princess Nara's scans, running simulations with the Silvara plant compounds. The science was promising but complex, requiring careful calibration and months of testing before anything could be administered safely. She had also spent those days carefully not thinking about Kale's confession, which was difficult when he was present for most of her research sessions, offering insights and asking questions that pushed her thinking in new directions. They had fallen into an easy working rhythm, professional and focused, but there were moments when their hands would brush reaching for the same instrument, or when she would look up to find him watching her with an expression that made her forget what she was saying. Now, standing outside the Empress's private study, Maya wondered if she was about to lose even that fragile progress. The study was smaller than she expected, lined with living plants and dominated by a massive window overlooking the palace gardens. Empress Liara therein stood at that window, her back to the door, her posture rigid with tension. She was shorter than Kale, more compact, but she carried herself with the kind of presence that made size irrelevant. "Dr. Chen, thank you for coming." The Empress's voice was measured, careful. "Please, sit." Maya remained standing. "With respect, Your Majesty, I have been detained against my will for over 2 weeks. I think we are past the point of polite pleasantries." The Empress turned, and Maya was struck by how exhausted she looked. There were shadows under her eyes, and her hands trembled slightly before she clasped them behind her back. "Fair enough. You deserve honesty, even if it comes late." She gestured to a sitting area, and this time Maya accepted, lowering herself into a chair that adjusted to her body with unsettling precision. The Empress sat across from her, and for a moment they simply studied each other. Finally, Liara spoke. "My daughter is dying. You know this already from your work with the medical team. What you may not know is that I have spent the past 3 years watching her deteriorate, trying every treatment our medicine can offer, consulting with specialists from a dozen worlds. Nothing has worked. Nothing has even slowed the progression." Maya said nothing, letting the Empress continue. "Then you arrived, with your brilliant mind and your earth sensibilities, so determined to catalog and understand everything you encountered." The Empress's voice held something that might have been admiration. "And you discovered something that none of our botanists had seen in centuries of studying the Silvara plant. You saw its potential for healing. So you trapped me here." Maya kept her voice level. "You took away my freedom, damaged my career, terrified my family, all without the courtesy of an explanation." "Yes." Liara met her gaze directly. "I made a choice in fear and desperation, and it was the wrong choice. I convinced myself that I was acting for the good of the empire, that diplomatic complications were acceptable prices for my daughter's life." She paused, and when she continued, her voice was quieter. "But the truth is simpler and more selfish. I was a mother who could not bear to watch her child die, and I took what I needed without regard for the cost to others. Maya felt some of her anger deflating, replaced by a more complicated mixture of sympathy and frustration. Why not just tell me? Why not explain what you needed and ask for my help? Because I knew what Earth planned to do with your research. The Empress pulled up a holographic display, showing the same classified documents Kale had found. Your university, your government, they saw military applications and strategic advantages. They were going to classify your findings, restrict access, ensure that only Earth benefited from your discovery. She looked at Maya with something like pity. If I had let you leave, if I had asked nicely and gone through proper diplomatic channels, you would have returned home to find your research seized and your ability to help anyone severely limited. You do not know that. Maya heard the doubt in her own voice. I could have fought the classification. I could have published independently. And destroyed your career in the process, made yourself an enemy of your own government. Liara shook her head. I have lived in politics long enough to know how these games are played, Dr. Chen. They would have buried you and your research both, and Nara would have died anyway. At least this way, there was a chance. A chance built on lies and coercion. Maya leaned forward, meeting the Empress's gaze. I have spent the past week reviewing Nara's medical files and running preliminary compound analysis. The science is sound. I believe I can develop a treatment that will halt the degeneration and possibly reverse some of the damage. But it will take time, careful testing, and complete transparency. The Empress's breath caught, hope flickering across her face before she controlled it. You are saying you will help. I am saying I will help on my terms. Maya stood, pacing to the window. Nara is 17. She is brilliant and frightened and does not deserve to die because of political complications or her mother's pride. I became a scientist to help people, and that includes her. But I will not do it as a prisoner, and I will not do it in secret. What are you asking for? Liara's voice was carefully neutral, but Maya could hear the desperation underneath. First, my detention ends immediately. If I stay, it is by choice, not force. Second, Earth is told the truth about why I remained on Thessera. Not military secrets or classified research, but the simple fact that I am working to save a girl's life. Maya turned to face the Empress. Third, my research findings will be published openly, available to any world that needs them. No military applications, no strategic monopolies. Medicine should not be a weapon or a bargaining chip. Earth will be furious. The Empress stood as well. They will see it as theft of their intellectual property, a violation of research agreements. Let them be furious. Maya's voice was firm. They were planning to weaponize healing technology. I will not be part of that, no matter which world is doing it. If they want to end my career over this, then I will find a new career. The two women studied each other for a long moment. Finally, the Empress nodded slowly. Your terms are acceptable. I will send formal communication to Earth's embassy today, explaining the situation and your decision to remain. She paused. And Dr. Chen, for what it is worth, I am sorry. You deserved better than what I gave you. Yes, Maya said simply. I did. But apologies are meaningless without changed behavior. If we are going to work together, if I am going to trust you even partially, then no more deceptions. No more political maneuvering behind my back. If there is a problem, you come to me directly. Agreed. Liara extended her hand in the earth gesture of contract. Maya hesitated, then accepted it, sealing an alliance built on necessity and hope. She left the Empress's study feeling lighter than she had in weeks, as if a weight she had been carrying had finally lifted. Her communications access was restored within the hour, and she spent the afternoon sending messages to her family, explaining in carefully chosen words that she had decided to extend her stay on Thessera for humanitarian research purposes. Her mother's response was worried but understanding. Her sister's was more direct. You met someone, didn't you? You have that sound in your messages, like you are trying very hard not to smile while talking about plant biology. Maya did not dignify that with a response, mostly because it was uncomfortably accurate. She found Kale in the greenhouse that evening, working late as usual, his hands gentle on a flowering specimen that had just opened its petals. He looked up as she entered, and the hope in his eyes was almost painful to witness. "The Empress agreed to my terms," Maya said without preamble. "I am staying, freely, to work on Nara's treatment. All deceptions end now." Kale set down his instruments carefully, as if afraid sudden movement might shatter the moment. "Maya, I do not know what to say. You could start by showing me those hybrid specimens you were cultivating in the East greenhouse." Maya moved closer, allowing herself to smile. "I have been curious about your cross-pollination experiments, but we have been too busy with crisis management to discuss them properly." "Now?" Kale looked bewildered. "You just negotiated your freedom and committed to months of intensive research, and you want to look at plant hybrids?" "I want normal," Maya said, and was surprised by how much she meant it. "I want to walk through gardens and talk about science with someone who challenges my thinking. I want to remember why I fell in love with this work in the first place." She paused, gathering courage. "And I want to spend time with you without the weight of impossible choices hanging over us." Kale's expression shifted through surprise to something warmer, more vulnerable. "The East greenhouse it is, then. But I should warn you, some of the specimens are quite experimental. There is a very real chance they might do something unexpected." Maya laughed, and it felt like releasing tension she had been holding for weeks. "Kale, I am on an alien world, voluntarily extending a research mission to develop experimental treatments for a genetic disease using plants that glow in the dark. I think my tolerance for unexpected outcomes has become quite high." They walked through the palace together as the twin suns set, painting the sky in colors that Maya was no longer memorizing for goodbye but learning to call familiar. The East greenhouse was smaller than the main research complex, tucked into a corner of the gardens where ancient trees provided shelter from the strongest winds. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of growing things and rich soil. Kale had clearly been working here alone for months, creating combinations of species that should not have been possible. There were flowers that shifted colors based on ambient temperature, vines that grew in mathematical spirals, trees that produced fruit with flavors that changed based on the listener's mood. "This is incredible," Maya breathed, moving from specimen to specimen. "Kale, some of these hybrids are theoretically impossible. How did you achieve stable genetics across such divergent species?" "Trial and error mostly." He moved to stand beside her, pointing out particular features. "And perhaps a bit of intuition. Plants have their own logic, their own way of communicating what they need. You just have to learn to listen." "You make it sound like art instead of science." Maya examined a flower that seemed to pulse with inner light. "Why not both?" Kale's voice was gentle. "You earth scientists, you sometimes forget that understanding and beauty are not opposing forces. The most elegant solutions are often the most beautiful ones." Maya turned to find him watching her with that expression again, the one that made her heart do complicated things. The greenhouse was warm, filled with growing things and soft light, and they were alone in a way they had not been since before her detention. "Kale," she started, then stopped, unsure how to articulate what she was feeling. "About what you said the other day, in the main greenhouse. You do not have to address it." He looked away, suddenly fascinated by a nearby vine. "I spoke out of turn. You have enough to process without adding my feelings to the burden. What if I want to address it?" Maya took a small step closer. "What if your feelings are not a burden but rather one of the variables I have been trying to solve for?" Kale went very still. "Maya, you need to be certain. You are staying for Nara's treatment, which is the right choice for the right reasons. But that is a commitment of months, maybe years. You should not complicate that with personal entanglements unless you are absolutely sure." "I am a scientist," Maya said, taking another step. "Absolute certainty is a myth. We work with probabilities and evidence and the willingness to adjust our hypotheses when new data emerges. She was close enough now to see the way his breathing had quickened, the way his hands had clenched slightly at his sides. And the data suggests that somewhere between cataloging specimens and debating photosynthesis mechanisms, I fell in love with you. The words hung in the air between them, huge and terrifying and true. Cale stared at her as if she had just announced the discovery of a new fundamental force of nature. Maya, he said, and her name in his voice was a question and an answer and a prayer all at once. She closed the remaining distance between them, and when he pulled her into his arms, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Like pieces fitting together, like variables balancing, like a hypothesis confirmed through careful experimentation. They kissed surrounded by impossible flowers and hybrid dreams, two scientists who had found something that could not be catalogued or quantified or explained through any research protocol. His hands were gentle on her face, and she could feel his heart racing against her own, both of them slightly awed by the discovery they had made. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Cale rested his forehead against hers. I should probably mention that Thessaran courtship traditions are quite complex. There are ceremonial requirements and family approvals and at least 6 different types of formal gifts that must be exchanged in proper sequence. Maya laughed softly. And I should mention that Earth dating customs involve a lot of awkward dinners and uncertainty about who pays for what. Maybe we can just make up our own traditions as we go. I would like that. He pulled her close again, and she settled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Maya Chen, what are we doing? I think, Maya said slowly, working through the implications, we are building something new. A research partnership that became a friendship that became this. Whatever this is. This is me being grateful that my aunt made terrible diplomatic decisions. Cale's voice was warm with humor. Though I will never tell her that. They stood together in the greenhouse as full darkness fell outside, the bioluminescent plants beginning their nightly display. Maya thought about the journey ahead, the months of research and testing, the careful work of developing treatments and navigating the complex ethics of xenomedicine. She thought about the home she had left behind and the new home she was choosing to build. Mostly, though, she thought about how strange and wonderful it was that love could grow in unexpected places, that sometimes the best discoveries were the ones you were not looking for, and that freedom was not always about having the power to leave but rather having the power to choose where you stayed. I need to call my sister, Maya said eventually. She is going to be insufferably smug about this. About what? Cale looked down at her with gentle curiosity. About being right. Maya smiled against his chest. She said I met someone, and I told her I was just here for the research. And now? Now I am here for the research and the impossible flowers and the prince who talks to plants like they are people. Maya pulled back enough to meet his eyes. And because somewhere along the way, this alien world started feeling more like home than the planet I was born on. Cale kissed her forehead gently. Then welcome home, Dr. Chen. May your stay be long and filled with groundbreaking discoveries. Maya laughed. Always the scientist, even in romantic moments. Would you have me any other way? No, she admitted. I really would not. Outside, the twin suns of Thessera Minor were long gone, replaced by 3 moons that painted the gardens in silver light. Inside the greenhouse, 2 people stood surrounded by growing things and the quiet certainty that sometimes the best research projects were the ones that changed your life in ways you never expected. Princess Nara's treatment would take months to develop and test. There would be setbacks and breakthroughs, late nights in the laboratory and careful documentation of every variable. Earth's government would protest Maya's decision, though they would ultimately accept it when her published research proved too valuable to suppress. But that was all in the future, problems to solve and challenges to meet. Right now, in this moment, Maya was exactly where she needed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do, with exactly the right person beside her. She had left Earth searching for knowledge and had found something far more precious. Not just alien plants and scientific breakthroughs, but a place where she belonged, a purpose that mattered, and a love that had grown quietly and inevitably, like something that had been waiting all along for the right conditions to bloom. In the end, Maya thought, the best experiments were the ones where you could not predict the outcome, where you had to trust the process and follow the data wherever it led, even if it took you somewhere you never imagined going. Especially then.